Welcome to the Be Well Now Method podcast. I'm Janet Holtz, and I am a clinical exercise physiologist and creator of Exercising Well. And I am really so pleased to be able to share with you my guest today, Manya. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but I don't love social media. I'm not on social media a lot, but I do love LinkedIn because I get to connect with people who love learning too. And when I saw Manya's posts about IFS, which she'll talk about and explain, and eating and that space, because I'm not a food person, I really like to connect with people who are able to talk this way about food, the way I like to talk about exercise. So I'm very excited to have this conversation today with Manya. So Manya, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Janet. So I'm a certified health education specialist, and I came into this work kind of through the health nutrition space and realized very early on that I wanted to be able to address the emotional realm of health. It wasn't enough just to be talking about food plans and what we should eat. I just knew there was more under the surface. And so luckily I found IFS, internal family systems, and fell in love with it. It's this approach where all of our parts are welcome. And so we're not just working with the part that, is binging or, is restricting. We're working with all of them, knowing they all have positive intentions and kind of inviting them all to have a seat at the table, knowing, they're all trying to help and finding our core self, which exists in all of us behind all the parts. And it's calm and compassionate and courageous and knows how to relate to the parts, accept them, love them, and help them heal. So that's what I do now. IFS for eating and mind body healing.
So good. It's so good. I'm so excited to dive into IFS with you because I think it really does connect with this. My why for doing all of this is because I find that when we talk about exercise or behaviors or eating or health or any of that, habits, I find that the biggest problem is that people are left feeling less whole. And so my core why is wholeness, which is what drives me to do this work. To how do we bring all that together? How do we talk about this stuff, about being healthy that comes from that best place in a way that reminds us that we're whole, doesn't make us feel less than. And so I'd love to hear your core why. Like what drives you to do this work? What's that word for you?
Balance. Being able to balance these extreme parts. And often, we've seen in the external world that we go from one extreme to the other, these intense polarizations in the nutrition space as well, between, diet culture, restriction, excessive focus on body to, eat whatever you want. Food doesn't really matter. Weight doesn't really matter. And I'm trying to hold both. And I'm really passionate helping people, I guess, from my health background, how to be healthy in a healthy way, so we don't have to kick out. We don't have to kick out those managers that want to, restrict food. We can just help them chill out, and then they can set healthy limits around food. And we don't have to kick out the parts that, want to binge. We just help them relax and help us enjoy treats,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so lovely and peaceful. And wow, wouldn't the world be a lovely place if we could get rid of all that chatter and make peace with it and find this way. So I'm really looking forward to learning more about how you do that with IFS and with food and eating. I like to start this podcast with a meditation. That's the B step of the Be Well Now method, which is just, I think we kind of dive into stuff and we could be starting in a stress state. And I'd rather us start in a well state where we're really connected to that part of us. You can close your eyes or just look down at something, but just take a moment to a little exhale, drop into your body and your heart and just feel that you're here. And just notice your breath is moving in and out. Your body is taking care of you, and there's nothing you have to do to make that happen. And so just let yourself feel that sense of your body and your heart taking care of you. You don't have to control your breath. You can just allow it to move in and out and feel that sense of being cared for as your breath moves in and as your breath moves out. And let that feeling of the breath connect you with that center, that core, that place of knowing beyond thought, where you are calm and compassionate and kind, and let yourself rest there, receiving your own kindness. Gratitude for being here, listening to the podcast, being on the podcast, just for being here in this moment. And then let that awareness extend out to your body. Let your body fill with presence from the soles of your feet to the palms of your hands to the crown of your head, just feeling this sense of this container of your body and the energy that's there, and allow that energy to move you in some way. Notice how what you know inside can turn into some movement, whether it's light and just really gentle movement, or it might be wanting a real energized, expansive, big stretch. And allow that connection between your whole person to just be embodied here, allowing your body to move and take care of you. And then letting your attention come back into your body and stillness and the room, and feeling this balanced awareness of the space inside and the space around you. Whenever you're ready, let your eyes open and let your attention come back to the room. So you're welcome. So I'm wondering what is here for you now? Like, what are you coming into the discussion with now in your wholeness?
Yeah. Thank you, Janet. Well, I really appreciate, before we started recording, you invited me to bring my whole self. I live in Israel, and war and ceasefire and all this, it's a lot. And, I usually don't talk about it because Israel is like such a polarizing topic, and so many people like hate us. So I'm nervous about that backlash, but I appreciate that you invited me to just bring it in. And like this, I'm from Florida, and so moving here like 3 years ago, expecting, to be safe. It's a safe place to be Jewish. And then bam, October 7th, war past, year and more, it's just a lot for the nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm so sorry that you are having to manage all of that inside. And I think, giving us permission to show up whole, to say, a lot's going on in here. It might be smiling on the outside, but there's a lot happening in here. I think that if we can see each other authentically, then hopefully there's more peace in the world. If we can just see the person, not the politics and the news and all of that stuff, just the person behind it. So thank you for sharing that, because I know it's hard to share it. Like you said, it's vulnerable and it's scary because our world is polarized. So, so I appreciate that. And the way things are here in the States, as you know, are polarizing too. So on a small scale, I can kind of feel that sense for you. So sending you lots of support over there.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah. So so that was the B step, and we just get to be, and and just be, and never perfect, just always whole. So the well step is kind of tapping into, I love how did you say that center of the, these parts, that center, what did you call that?
We call it self. Dick Schwartz, who discovered IFS, he discovered this, working with people's parts. And all of a sudden, when the parts relaxed, he said the same person showed up in everyone. And that person is calm and curious and clear and confident and all these C words.
Oh, I love that. I love alliteration too. And it's so funny because I didn't even know that about IFS, but I find the same thing when I do that core why. I do have 5 questions to find your core why. And when I do it with people, it always comes down to the same thing. And I think it goes back to our values and who we are at our core. And I agree, calm and compassionate and caring. It's like all of that is who we are at our center. Okay. So can you tell me more about IFS? And for the people listening who might not know what IFS is, and if it sounds a little weird to talk about our parts, like how do you make that something that's user friendly and something that helps?
Yeah, such a good question. I was just listening to Dick talk the other day, and he said how he describes it to lay people is like, well, think about a decision that you've had to make, and usually there's one voice, and we even use parts language. We say, part of me wants this, part of me wants that. And so what he discovered is like, these aren't just random thoughts or feelings. Like they're actually, he calls them like sub-personalities that you can get in touch with and relate to. And so it's really helpful in the eating space. We have in IFS, we talk about managers and firefighters. And so the managers are the ones that want us, to work hard and be healthy and accomplish things. And they drive us a lot. And when they get extreme, they can become really critical. They could become, the restricting parts. And on the other side of the polarization, we have the firefighters, and they help us relax and have fun and have pleasure and, let off steam. But when they get unhealthy, they turn to, food and any addictive substance to try to numb out pain. So we have these two sides. And so it's so helpful to know that they're good and in their natural state, they're there to help us. They just get extreme.
Okay. Can you help me understand the firefighters, why it's called the firefighters? Because I expected you to say something different when you said firefighters.
So, right. It's such a good question. And honestly, it might not be the right name. So they're named based off of their role when they're extreme. And that is to put out emotional fires. And so if they rush in when, they're scared of an emotion emerging, and they try to put out that fire with, food or alcohol or drugs or screens, shopping.
Okay. Yeah. Kind of like your fight, flight, freeze response when there's a problem. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. So in normal times, though there's a firefighter there, it's going to keep me safe. It's about safety. But then when there's an extreme, it's going to go into action, maybe in a way that's not so helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And the firefighters, when they're burdened, they come, they rush in, and they try to put out the flames of pain as quickly as possible without regards for the consequences. And then the managers come in afterwards, and they're like, what the heck did you just do? What's wrong with you? They have like totally different strategies, but for dealing with the same underlying pain.
Okay. So I'm imagining as I'm listening to you, I know that I've had that, right? Like, what did you do? Why did you eat that? Why didn't you do that? Why did you say that? Why did, and that manager part of me kind of beats up that part of me that did something reactive and then regrets it and maybe feels shame about it and guilt, or, just wants to rewind time and say it differently or do it differently.
Exactly.
So how do you use IFS to help people find that peace and that center between this?
Yeah, such a good question. We get to know the parts. First, when a client comes in, usually I just help them parts map to just conceptualize what's going on. I have a triangle that's based off of C. Sykes. She has this amazing addiction triangle, and it just kind of shows the cycle. And it's like, okay, so you binge, and after you binge, you have this manager that comes in and criticizes you and tries to get you back on a diet. And then, maybe you'll feel shame and pain, which is our young wounded parts called exiles. And then what happens then? Either I'll go back on a diet to try to make me feel better, or then maybe I'll just go on a binge because I feel so bad. So we start tracking it. And that in itself helps bring some, we call it unblending, some more perspective. So you're not in the cycle, you're kind of seeing it. And then we can slowly get to know the parts and their positive intentions, how they're trying to help. And as one side relaxes in that polarization, the other side tends to relax too.
So meaning that there's less shame and blame, and you're not caught in that storm of self-criticism, and you can kind of stop that cycle and look at it from an outsider's point of view, like you might do with a good friend, to say, oh my gosh, you're in so much pain. What can I do to help? That kind of mindset with yourself, that internal system. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're really healing that a pattern of thinking and relating to your thoughts and behaviors and unwinding it so that you can use it better, it sounds like.
Yeah. So that the parts can be there to help us, right? In the eating disorder. So I was working in the food addiction world, and I found they were often trying to get rid of the binging part. And I get it because it's caused a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And then in the eating disorder world, they're often trying to get rid of the restricting part, by kind of just having no food rules. And I get that, because those parts have caused a lot of pain. And what I'm trying to say, and I believe it's, the true IFS approach, is that, these parts are good parts. They're just stuck in extreme roles. And when we help them relax, we can have the manager that helps us, set healthy limits, kind of like a loving parent. Yeah. And we can have the firefighter who might need a new name, but who helps us have fun and enjoy pleasure. Yeah. And we need both of them.
So that saying, what you resist persists, comes to mind here when we're pushing away, oh, that's bad, that's good. And we have these extremes, especially with food, but also with exercise. Oh, that's bad, that's good, should. And, we end up in this kind of storm of shoulds. You're helping people find that peace with all of these parts and accept it as wholeness rather than resist it and push it away, because then they're going to bounce back and come back at you. Yeah.
Exactly. We think that if we kind of accept the parts, they're just going to get bigger, but really when we accept them, they relax.
Oh, yeah. So profound, right? It's so simple and it makes so much sense when we think of other things, but when we're doing that internally, it's harder. So to have someone like you kind of map it out and show it and help unwind that tangle of all of this, how valuable. I know so many people are stuck in this. My friend calls it the deadly triangle. It's weight, exercise, diet. She calls it the deadly triangle. Like I gain weight, then I exercise more, and I diet, and then I diet, and I think my weight goes down, so I think I don't have to exercise. And I'm just stuck in this deadly triangle. And I like how you use the triangle mapping for that too. Gives you a path out. What is the response with clients? Like, tell me that experience of working with you and what people say.
So it takes a long time because so when people were coming to me before I met IFS, they just came to me kind of for health coaching, nutrition advice, and they just wanted a food plan and they wanted a quick fix. And that's why a lot of people come to practitioners.
Yes.
And so that's, I believe, the reason diets fail is because people come in, they basically want our manager to collude with their manager to just make a plan, fix it, right? So that doesn't work. Then the firefighters are going to backlash and be like, hey, what about me? You're restricting, you're, depriving me. Yeah. And so the IFS approach is much slower. The most important thing is for my managers to chill out. And I have very active managers. So it's wonderful that they do that. They're willing to do that in session to just be with the client. And so I will sit with clients for months. And there's so much shame around food and weight for some of them that we don't touch that for a long time. Yeah. We're just creating a safe container, being there with whatever's coming up. And slowly, the firefighters who've been so shamed are willing to come out, and have a seat at the table. And then we can start, kind of working with them. Yeah.
How do people respond to that slow approach? I know for me, with exercise, it's hard. It takes so much reminding, trust the process. It will work because you've seen the end result, right? But that slow startup, that not rushing in, that's why I created the Be Well Now method, because we're so used to, okay, let's go. Like you said, the managers, okay, give me a plan. I'm ready to go. And then it burns out. And we know this. So how do you help people with that in the beginning to calm that manager?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we first often have to start working with the manager, even just like reassuring it that like, I know these parts are causing a lot of issues. And for some clients, severe health issues, we're going to work on that. And so we just do a lot of validation for the manager and, kind of build trust there and be like, we have the same goal. Your way hasn't been working, even though we know you're trying to help. Would you be willing to relax a little and try this new way?
Yeah. Okay. So kind of talking to the manager and helping it to see that what you're doing is aligning with what the manager part wants.
Exactly. Which is another reason why it's so helpful to tell the managers, because the restricting managers, they often, when you ask them what they want to be called, they say, we want to be called the healthy part. So even if they have extreme, strategies, deep down, they just want us to be well. Yeah. So if they know that we're not going to like totally throw nutrition out the window, but that they will have a role, then they're willing to get on board.
Okay. So a lot of this is how you're talking to them, but then also how that person is doing that self-talk of reframing it, not this, I'm lazy, I have to just make myself do it, I need someone to make me do it. There's a lot of that real harsh wording about themselves and their behaviors, and that when you can talk to it from that kind place, it can calm down a little bit, as long as you're holding that same value.
Exactly. Like those same underlying needs. We're kind of we all want the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The same page. Yeah.
Yeah. So this brings me to like, I think what happens, and I want your take on this. I think we use fear as a motivator in healthcare. I see it all the time. Like, if you don't do this, you're going to die. You have to quit smoking. You have to start exercising, lose weight now, or you can't have that knee replacement. we use stress as a motivator and it works, right? It works for a little while. How do you move that into a boundary that provides freedom? Like, how do you change those rules and those good and bad narratives into this more growth mindset?
Yeah. So it's really by connecting with the parts. And so, for example, that would be like some critical managers.
Yeah.
And to just get to know their positive intention, like, oh, you really want her to be healthy. And you're so upset about this extreme firefighter that you keep upping the ante and becoming even more critical. Maybe gently pointing out that that's actually making things worse. But really connecting with them and help, like, often if we criticize the critical parts, they are just going to get more extreme.
Right.
And so wherever we can bring in some acceptance, and we can do that because all parts have a positive intention. So knowing that, we can really get curious and find out their positive intention. And we might have to unblend from parts that don't like them, and that's okay. Then they start to relax. And it's really, we call it the self to part relationship that brings kind of more trust in the system. And so slowly the parts kind of chill out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this requires so much connection to your body and your heart.
Yeah.
And I find that most of our narratives with diet and exercise are disconnect, with exercise especially. Like, people could be very mindful, but then when they exercise, they're watching TV and just pushing to get through it and checking the box and, okay, I did it today. And I find that exercise can be a practice of disconnecting in all these other ways that we might try to connect. How do you help people kind of almost like see what's on the outside and those messages that are coming in on the inside and repair this internal in a world that really tends to pull us apart from what we know inside?
Yeah. So what actually, I can talk about what we do in IFS, but what came up for me, and it's so relevant with, food, is just like our food environment, like this ultra processed food environment, plus all like the conflicting messages, diet culture, and then, eat whatever you want. And, doctors who don't really know what we should be eating. And, it's so confusing, so much noise out there. And I really do believe, like, inside intuitively, we know what to eat. And there's, big food companies are trying to hijack our reward circuitry and keep us coming back for more. And so it can get really confusing. And personally, and I wouldn't recommend this for everyone unless it felt right. Like, I try to keep a real food environment at home. And so that helps my brain stay calm. And then I can stay more connected to my body. Because when I eat too much sugar, for example, I will be stuck in cravings. And, and that's not because I'm restricting sugar. It's because I'm eating it.
Because that's what it's designed to do. Yeah.
That's what it does to my brain. Yeah. And so that's one strategy. Can you tell me more about, like, what you had in mind?
Yeah. So I think of this like when people are getting a lot of exercise information and a lot of shoulds, and then it fills their head with these ideas. I work with my clients and patients to create a safe space inside so that they can then go out into the world knowing they're whole and filtering through what they're getting.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear how you do that.
Yeah, it's continual trying to come back to the body. We're so conditioned to look out there, right?
Yeah.
For approval for what we need.
Yeah.
And it's just checking in. I have a practice I try to do every morning and evening, just check in with the parts. How's everyone doing? What do you guys need? And also just like, focusing on, am I hungry? Am I full? Kind of just getting to know that. What am I craving? Yeah. But again, at least for me and for a lot of people in this culture, especially people who have like some addictive neurobiology, it's really hard to tap into that body wisdom when we're so bombarded by, companies that are trying to hook us and all this nutrition messaging. So just, it's coming home, and it's very hard.
Yeah. It's hard. It takes a lot of practice. So having that practice, an actual intentional practice of every day, that sounds like one of those boundaries that keeps you free by checking in, having that structure in your day.
Now that you brought in, kind of structure and boundaries, it made me think, because of the war, I've been letting my firefighters eat, and they really do need a new name, right? I've been letting them eat way more food even when I'm not hungry than I usually would, but
Yeah.
the managers get to set the parameters. And so, for example, we're keeping, real food at home. We brought in some dried fruit this week, which I usually won't eat, but
Yeah.
I'll let the firefighters, have a few pieces after a meal. It's like, it's opening up and closing the boundaries based on the needs of the moment.
Okay. So those boundaries are not rigid. This is a really flexible process because life is fluid, right? What a lovely, peaceful way to be. And I know it's not like, oh, I'm constantly zen and peaceful. It's more of you have a home base to come back to that's peaceful. It sounds like you know where to come back to when things kind of get a little crazy.
Yeah. Like for example, if I open up the boundaries too much, even for example, if I eat some sugar and then or even, my husband is bringing home all this like spelt pasta. And so I'll eat some of it and then I'll just notice the cravings that after the first time I eat it, it's just a little. After the second time, it's even more. And then now I'm so aware I can notice when it's taking over my brain. And it's like, no, I'm going to choose not to have that because I like having a clear brain.
Yeah. So you have that interoception that your what your body is telling you when your brain feels like, but then you also have this self-kindness piece because we can know a lot. We can know this stuff, but what turns knowledge into action is that sense of self-care. Like, I want to do this for myself. It's not a should. That sounds like understanding it. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's also, instead of exiling, I did this in the beginning of my healing journey, instead of exiling the part that likes to eat food, right? And being just like, go away. We need to have all these rigid rules to like get healthy.
Yeah.
It's like actually welcoming it in within boundaries. It's like, okay, we're not going to have this, but I let it have so much fun food within limits. Like I make healthy banana muffins and it, it can have so much for pleasure.
Yeah. So you can still enjoy it in a way that works for you, but you don't have to abandon that part of you that wants to feel good and wants to still function really well.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a constant balancing act. And I'm so thankful that we have you in the world doing this because I agree. I think that we need somebody speaking the balance. There's all these extremes and everything. And the extremes almost feel safe, right? They almost feel like, just tell me what to do, those managers, right? And this is messy work being in the middle. But what freedom we get from that to find that balance between that.
Yeah.
So the now step is, what are the practical steps? Like, what would you tell somebody who's listening to this and like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, but I don't even know where to start, or what could I do to incorporate some of this?
Yeah. So we just start by noticing, noticing the thoughts, the feelings, kind of just getting curious, like, oh, I wonder why that part of me, wants to eat the whole bag of cookies, and then noticing often the part will just take us over, right? And we'll eat the whole bag of cookies. And it's not until after that the manager, right, kicks in. It's like, what's wrong with you? That we notice what happened. Then we can notice that manager and just be like, oh, I see you, critical manager. How are you trying to help me? There's like a whole list of questions I could send you, Janet, that you could ask your parts. Some people like to journal them. The top 2 is like, how are you trying to help me? And what are you afraid would happen if you didn't do this job?
So powerful. Yes. If you send those, I'll put them in the show notes so everyone can get them. What a reframe rather than what's wrong with me? Why did you do that?
Right. It's because, Dick discovered that all parts have positive intentions. And it's because of that we can, bring so much compassion and curiosity.
Yeah. Just that reframe alone. Yeah.
No bad parts.
Yeah. No bad parts. We're always whole. I love it. I love how that came back to the B step. Always the first step is just noticing, just being, not being critical, just aware with kindness and curiosity. And when we start anything like that, we have so much more to work with rather than we start with just forcing things. We start whole, then we can bring in all those parts. Yeah. Manya, I want to keep going, but I also want to make this doable for people to listen to this. But I would love to have you back and do a part 2 to this and continue to talk about this. But thank you so much for doing the work and having the courage to speak about the middle, even when it's not something that everybody wants to talk about, and to do this hard work that actually makes things easier and less stressful.
Thank you. Thanks, Janet. Thanks for all your important work too.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. So how can people find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so you can go to my website. It's meetmanya, MANYA.com. And I sent Janet my social, so you can put that as well.
Put those in there. Perfect. Thank you, Manya, so much. I wish you well. I wish you well. Thank you for taking care of yourself, because that's the best way we're going to take care of the world. So I'm glad you have a process for doing this. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Take care. Thank you.